All right, everyone, thanks for coming. This session is 3037, how to build and deploy a well-run hybrid cloud. If that's not the session you're looking for, now would be the time to go.
Or stay.
Or stay, anyway, if you'd like. Please scan their badge array, so it's good. Yeah. So my name is Tyler Britton. I work in EMC's Global Solutions Marketing. I'm a Principal Technical Marketing Manager. And Rick?
Rick Shear, I'm a Principal Technologist. Systems engineer in the vSpecialist team at EMC, so my focus is on everything with a little V or a big V in front of it.
A realize or an air or a cloud.
Yeah, vRealize on-demand air cloud.
Yeah.
Operations.
So, you ready?
Yep. So actually, before we kick off, a little background story of what this session is about. So I think it will add some clarity of why we're doing this. Tyler is going to run the first portion of the presentation, then I'll wrap it up on the backside. But within EMC, we actually we're part of this greater federation of companies. Right? You may have already heard this or seen signs of it, but the federation is basically EMC, VMware, Pivotal, and RSA, and each company has a specific focus, right? Obviously, EMC, we're the data center company, right? Storage, big iron, management tools focused around the data center, for example. And VMware is all about software defined, right? How could we make the hardware as useless as possible, right? And then Pivotal, obviously, is all around applications, RSA around security. So within the federation, we have these joint solutions called EVP solutions, EMC, VMware, Pivotal solutions. And we'll be releasing a number of joint solutions as part of that partnership. One of those solutions, which we'll be talking about today, is our enterprise hybrid cloud solution, right? So at the end of the day, it's a methodology or a reference architecture or whatever buzzword you want to tie to it of how to deploy a hybrid cloud as quickly and as easily as possible while still having all of the great characteristics of what a cloud is. And then the intellectual property or the benefit of it is that EMC and VMware jointly have already done a lot of the heavy lifting to tie in all the integrations. Right? So if you're an existing EMC customer using our technologies like Avamar, by show of hands, who's an Avamar customer? Awesome, well, thank you. And who actually might already be a Viper customer, Viper controller? Anybody? Okay. Newer technology, but still extremely relevant. But what we've done is if you already invested in those technologies, we provide the deep integration of those products into the hybrid cloud solution. And the best part about it is all this work has already been done. It's proven, it's validated, it's tested, retested. You'll see exactly how we've done this in real life. And it's available now as a customer to you, right? So these solutions guides and reference architectures are freely downloadable from emc.com, right? This isn't a product, it's a solution that's available to you right now today to leverage. Obviously, we do have consulting services and other services to enhance what you'll see today, but this is all great stuff that's coming from the Federation available to our customers. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tyler, and I'll talk to you guys in a little bit.
Thanks, Rick. So let's start off with a little legalese, so forward-looking statements. We're going to be talking about a few things that aren't things yet and are subject to change. So we'll see. So what is a well-run hybrid cloud? This was something internally. David Goulden had posed some goals for this year. Chad posted about it on his blog, and one of them was a number of well-run hybrid clouds. And once we saw that goal, we said, well, what does a well-run hybrid cloud look like, and why would customers care? Why do they need a hybrid cloud? So it really goes back to the business. It was noted at the keynotes, earlier this week. Infrastructure isn't an end to itself. We do it to run applications, and we run those applications to provide capabilities to the business. And one of the things we're seeing is the needs that the business has they need to be filled quicker. So agility is a big focus. How can we get things to developers, to the applications team, to be able to get things to happen much more quickly? And it's much more of a bigger focus on services. What services do you provide? You know, having a storage array or a hypervisor doesn't provide value. It's what services are being provided with it. And another big thing is internal and external resources, right? So we can't do everything just within our four walls of our data center. So how do we bring those together in a fashion that makes a lot of sense? And what we're really seeing is the hybrid cloud is giving you the best of both worlds. So the public cloud agility, solutions like vCloud Air allow you to quickly spin up new applications and move things around and provide capabilities like Pivotal Cloud Foundry or DR as a service or backup as a service. And then your internal private cloud brings you a lot of capabilities maybe that are specific to your environment, things like specific security designs or specific resiliency requirements, replication, availability, those types of things. So by being able to combine them both and have them both available to you, you can choose where to put the appropriate workloads based on their requirements. And by doing it this way, it really drives a lot of cost out. So even internally at EMC, we've seen this where, and a lot of companies spend the majority of their spend keeping the lights on. 70% is usually pretty common, just maintaining the existing status quo, and the remaining pieces are spent on innovation. So what we're seeing is as companies move to a more service-oriented model and doing IT as a service, they're driving a lot of costs out, which is allowing them to spend those additional dollars on new innovative things that the business really needs that can drive revenue to the business. And the thing about this is the business isn't a stranger to the concept of hybrid, right? There's already outsourcing that goes on, individual business functions. For example, EMC for payroll, we use ADP. You know, there's other outsourced payroll providers, legal services. You may use an outsourced creative firm or marketing firm. It's a concept that the business is really used to. But if you think about how those services are managed within the rest of the environment, you know, it's the local business unit that would normally provide those functions are brokering those relationships. So HR is working with the payroll provider. Your internal legal organization is working with your external counsel. It's a pretty common methodology, and it even applies to things like software as a service. EMC, for example, we also use Salesforce. So how can we bring these things together in a way that's easy for the business to consume, but in a way that's the IT organization can keep control over and be able to manage all these different pieces and different vendors. So what we had to do was we had to come up with a set of criteria to really define if something was a well-run hybrid cloud. How do we really, you know, make that moniker? A key one is being brokered as well as built. So not supplying all of the services, you know, buying equipment and running your data center and having a cloud. It's brokering third-party services. Self-provisioning within business policy is important. And that even includes approvals. So some of the times people think, hey, we want to have a service catalog, and every single thing in the service catalog goes for approval. Well, that's not really getting that agility. If I have to wait minutes, hours, days for someone to click to approve before I get what I want, that's really slowing down that agility you're trying to drive. Transparent pricing is really critical and what a lot of the customers and companies we're working with are focusing on, because that's the challenge. How do you even compare something to an external provider if you don't even know what it costs you right now to provide? So it's about giving a very clean, accurate cost for what these things will cost the business so they can make decisions and procure the appropriate IT resources. Standardization and automation is how we get there. So we got to limit the amount of one-offs and customizations to give a clean way to deploy this, and having automation tools to automate those deployments. So if someone requests something, opening a ticket and someone having to log in and manually configure services just isn't going to cut it. So we're going to take a quick break into this and go into a demo of what some of the pieces that a solution like this can provide. So if you haven't seen it before, this is VCloud Automation Center. So that is the core piece, and Rick's going to go into some of the details, the underlying components that we use to build our hybrid cloud. But in this instance, we're using vRealize Automation. Okay, vRealize Automation. And the idea behind the service catalog is to move beyond pure infrastructure as a service as well. While infrastructure as a service is something, parts of your business or parts of IT are looking for, it's more than that. Getting an individual VM isn't as useful as it used to be. So they're looking for more than that. So in this case, if we're looking for an entire Oracle instance and we want to deploy it into our Boston data center, we want to be able to just collect that and request that individual service, a Oracle service, not a Linux VM and then install Oracle on it or any of those other things. So we want to ask for an Oracle instance, and Oracle has a specific set of properties when you're setting it up that you need to provide. So in this case, password, a service name. So we can provide that as part of the catalog. And then when you make that request, the request goes out, the user gets the service they've asked for without any human intervention. And extending that out, in this case, the New York data center could be at your service provider, and you need an Oracle instance, but you need it in a much more quick manner, but you don't want to leverage the internal resources you have. So the idea is to be able to follow the exact same procedures, policies, to have those same services available, whether it's internal or external. So as you see, the screens are almost identical, but the big difference on the back end, right, is the underlying applications are landing in a different location. And that's that first piece of it, right? Getting the ease of deployment. But another piece of it, which this is, I don't know what the new name is now, but it's ITBM. Piece of the vCloud Automation Center or vRealize suite, this is giving you that cost transparency we talked about. So cost transparency for your entire cloud environment, whether it's internal or external, as part of your hybrid, as well as breakdowns by department, by group, by user, to be able to do appropriate, whether you want to do chargebacks or just even showbacks and cost visibility. So the different types of things we can see in there, we can break it down by the underlying costs, include things like operating system licenses, we can include maintenance, labor, whatever costs that we think are appropriate so that we can come up with the right charges in the service catalog when someone goes to request something. For example, that Oracle instance we asked for obviously incurs some Oracle licensing as well, so we need to be able to capture those costs so that they're allocated appropriately. And what we want to do is we want to see it for individual VMs, so we know from a chargeback or showback perspective, but we also want to see our entire environment. Where are we spending most of our money? Are we spending on operating system licenses? Or which particular operating systems are we spending it on? So you can see, for example, here, this particular use case with just under 200 VMs, our total monthly cost is just under 10 grand in this instance, applying all of those pieces of all the stack. Skip ahead. We can break it out, like I said, in detail, so if you need for either chargeback or reporting purposes. And the important piece here is how do we get the data in here? So some of the things you're going to set, right? So if you're buying servers, you know what they cost, and we can break down the cost to figure that out. But a lot of the focus is to, as Rick was kind of alluded to, is automating some of those processes to make it much more straightforward to do things like storage chargebacks. So that's part of it, because giving someone a bill or a showback for just runs on an array don't really tell them much. It's really consumed as part of an application. So you're asking for an application, you're getting virtual machines, you're getting software, you're getting storage, you're getting networking, you're getting all those pieces, so all those costs can be rolled up appropriately. You also have the ability, which we're here, is to compare costs. So that way you can look at other public cloud providers, and you can either take existing VMs and model their costs, figuring out what it's costing you to run it in your cloud versus some of these providers. You can also create example VMs, if you will. So if there's a requirement that comes down, they said, here we need some new machines to specifically support a new application, you can model them in here and see what those costs look like. The key thing here, though, is building hybrid clouds is more than technology. Rick's going to get into the technology stack and some of the other pieces of how to put something like this together, but it's larger than that, right? So the first piece is that getting some of that underlying technology in place, But then up there, you have to move up the stack to the applications, new ways to deploy applications, quicker ways to deploy applications, things like configuration management, tools like Chef and Puppet and Salt. Things like Pivotal Cloud Foundry for quicker, more agile app deployment, moving those applications to newer platforms to enable that. Also, when it comes to people's skill sets is around the operating model. So just putting some new technology in, but following the old procedures, the old support structure, the old kind of IT silos won't be very effective. You're not going to get that full agility that you're looking for. So being able to provide this in a more service provider oriented mindset is really the goal. So it requires a change in technology, both on the underlying infrastructure as well as the applications, and how you basically package and sell services internally to your customers. So that's kind of what you can do at a high level. Rick's going to come up right now, and he's going to go into the details of the building blocks that put this together.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Tyler. All right. We need to wake up a little bit. I think this is a good time to stretch out a little bit. I need a power clap. All right, so, all right, awesome. So, hey, all right. I also want to engage conversation. So by the end of the session, I think we'll have some free time, definitely have some free time for Q&A. I know some people are sometimes shy when they come up, ask questions. No holds barred, right? Ask anything about the solution, about the technologies that we're using, anything at all. As an incentive, we have some Starbucks gift cards that we got. They're empty, but it's a beautiful card. But no, there's something on there, so you guys can at least get a beverage in your free time. But yeah, so at the end, have some Q&A, and those of you that are brave enough to ask a question on the microphone, so it can be recorded and stored for history. I'll give you a gift card. All right, so what are the key components of building a solid, well-run hybrid cloud? Without looking at the individual pieces of technology, this is kind of the high-level overview, right? I'll show you the components that we leveraged next, but there's a number of products for a number of different companies that fit all of these buckets. At the very bottom, its focus is the infrastructure, servers, network, storage. It could be on-prem, it could be off-prem. That's core infrastructure, right? It could be in your data center, it could be in vCloud Air, it could be with a vCloud Air service provider, right, part of the vCloud Air network. It could be AWS, it could be rack space. It doesn't matter, that's infrastructure. Above that, this is the abstraction layer. This is the software-defined data center. This is what actually is providing the value on top of that infrastructure. So virtualization of the compute layer, virtualization of the network, the storage, right? And building really that common data center operating system that can run in your private data center or in the public cloud scenario as well. Above that, we have our cloud management stack. So here we have things like our service delivery model, the orchestration, the automation that happens, the magic. We have our monitoring and operational tools that fall in here too, right? So we have capacity planning, performance analytics tools like vRealize operations, right? And then we also have our business management reporting like vRealize Business, or ITBM, previously known as that Tyler showed in the last demo. And then finally, on top of that, this is the front end of it all. This is what your IT users use or your end users use to consume services. So building a well-run hybrid cloud isn't just for the end users. It can actually be used for your IT administrators as well to simplify their tasks, right? There's a number of mundane tasks out there like provisioning storage or creating a VLAN or even advanced things that I'll actually talk about a little bit later that can be fully automated end to end. Right, so the enabling services, that's the portal, the catalog, that's the resource scheduling, monitoring, and transparency of costs, right, to the end user, the front end of it all. if we look at the components that we used within the enterprise hybrid cloud solution, this is kind of how it lays out. From a hardware perspective, we're actually fluid and open, right? You can build it yourself using best-of-breed technology. You can go a converged route, right? Whether that's a vSpecs offering or a vBlock, or in the very close future, maybe Evo Rail, right? Or Evo Rack. And then obviously any public cloud offering as well, right? This could be, again, Rackspace, AWS, Azure, or VCloud Air, or VCloud Air network provider. The virtualization stack, there's no guess here. It's going to be vSphere, it's going to be NSX, and it's going to be Viper, providing the abstraction layers of the compute network and storage. VCO for orchestration, vRealize operations for management and operations. EMC storage analytics, this is our adapter for vRealize operations. This is our adapter that allows us to pull in rich metrics from the storage infrastructure into that single dashboard view of the entire data center. And obviously ITBM or vRealize business for cost analysis, things like that. And then VCAC, or now known as vRealize automation, as that front-end portal enabling your end users and your IT administrators. So hybrid cloud really enables valuable services, right? So if we look at the cloud enabling services, there's a number of really cool things we can do. Building of the foundation, building of that infrastructure is actually the easy part. Part of our services engagement process is actually to be able to deploy everything that you see here in about 30 to 45 days. And actually that can also include the procurement and deployment of the hardware if you look at options like vBlock, right? So the technology, we've made that really stupid simple, right? KISS, we kept it really simple, really easy to use, consume, but the value is really, what are you going to be doing on top of that solution? Out of the box, as you'll see through the demonstrations, we provide the integration into tools like Viper for storage, automation, provisioning, and our Avamar product for integrating backup and recovery type solutions into the portal. But the sky's the limit, right? Here's a couple options that we can enable. Things like end user services, being able to request VDI desktops on demand from the portal. Business services, again, storage services, backup recovery, but what if in your offering you can click a box that says, you know what, this needs to be replicated and protected? That's as simple as integrating that functionality into the product as well, right? And then app services. Tyler mentioned the notion of infrastructure as a service is being pretty simple, right? An empty virtual machine is actually fairly useless to an end user. Yeah, I can deploy a template with with Windows already loaded pretty quickly now as it is. The value is offering things like application as a service or even platform as a service, where the end user is getting instant value, right? In that Oracle use case, that's perfect. Within a few minutes, I have not only a virtual machine created, but Oracle installed and configured with an instance already carved out for the DBA to instantly use, right? So out of the box, we provide some of this customization already. I already talked about Avamar and Viper as the examples. So out of the box, we could provision new virtual servers and applications to your local cloud, right? Your local vSphere-based cloud, or any service provider. That's the power of vRealize automation, is it works out of the box with service providers like VCloud Air, the VCloud Air network, AWS, Azure, etc. We integrate the integration into Avamar as well. So when I provision a virtual machine, which I'll show you, I can choose, do I want to protect this with Avamar, and which backup service level do I want to use? I even take it a step further, which I'll talk about shortly. We can provision storage. So say my data store cluster is running low on space, and vRealize operations alerts me, the IT admin, that this business unit is running low on capacity. Well, instead of having to either track down the storage admin, or if I'm the server and storage and network admin, instead of me having to go into multiple tools to provision new storage, I can just log into my vRealize automation portal, and I apologize for hesitating. I have to remember to say vRealize automation. It's going to take a little while, but log into that portal and choose the service catalog option to provision new storage for that BU, right? We give you the power to monitor your assets from vRealize operations. That's provided through our adapters that plug into that product to give you that storage analytics. And also, finally, report on the costs, already what you've seen with the vRealize business portion of the stack. So what would it take normally to do things like create a backup service level for Avamar? These are actually all the steps required to make that possible. So to make it possible in a hybrid cloud, right? All the work that we've put into this. So things like being able to create a new policy in the console, then you have to create the policy schedule, add the service level in the Avamar client, create the folder structure within vCenter, activate the new group for backups, and then add those policies to EHC. Those are a lot of steps, and it takes a lot of work, and actually a lot of time to learn how to do things like this, right? So I have a couple screenshots of showing part of the process. Well, we've automated that everyday task, right? So we've written the scripts, we've written the customization that integrates into VCO and vRealize automation to make that possible. So now all of those steps are just a simple click within the portal, right? So what other things can I enable? I mentioned earlier that the sky's the limit. Well, anything you can think of could be automated and added to this portal. One of the most advanced things that we actually worked on, which I thought was pretty cool, Tyler mentioned the fact that we use ADP for payroll, and we may use Salesforce for our CRM system, and we may use eTime for our time tracking, or you may use Kronos or another system for time tracking. Think of all the things that HR has to do when there's a new employee, right? You have to create an account in Active Directory, create an Exchange mailbox, and that's one team that probably does that. And then their account has to be created for ADP, and their account has to be created for maybe Kronos, and their account has to be created for all these other different systems. What if we could automate all of that and just create one item in a catalog that says new employee? And you input maybe their name, their address, their social security number, and other pertinent employee information. And then it just goes through and does all of that for you. That's actually a real use case that we worked on for a customer to automate that entire process end to end. So think of all the time that was saved every time there's a new employee coming in, right? And I'll tell you, a company like EMC, we're, I believe, now over 60,000 employees. I think we have hundreds of new employees coming in monthly, right? So just think of all of the work that's required for every one of those employees. So it's very powerful. Anything that has an API or anything to be scripted, I can very easily create workflow automation accessible through vCloud Automation Center, vRealize automation. All right, so time for another demo. First, I apologize. We really wanted to do this live, but there's too many variables out of our control, right? Like internet access and servers that are sitting in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, and we're not in Raleigh, Durham, we're in San Francisco, right? So we attempted, but it was taking a little bit too long. I want you guys to have to stay longer, so we have a canned, but it's still very real, canned demo. This is actually recorded from the live environment we would normally use. So full disclosure, I think everyone on my team and within EMC loves to do real-time live demos. I don't want you to look through this and go, oh, it's a canned demo, it can't be real, it's smoke and mirrors. This isn't smoke and mirrors, it's real life, and it's a real environment. So I'm gonna log in to vRealize Automation as an IT administrator. Because of the full role-based access controls within vRealize Automation, each user could have a different catalog and different options, right? So me as the IT admin, I'm gonna log in and see in my catalog that I have perhaps some infrastructure-related services. So here I have a service to provision storage, which integrates with Viper, and I have another service to integrate or to create a backup service level within Avamar. These are the two integrations that come out of the box of the EHC solution. So I want to provision new storage. I click the item in the catalog, a quick description of what I can do and the options and what it does. I give a description of the task. So this is really more for auditing purposes, right? This is me to track what has been done. So this is logging whatever I put in the description plus my login account so I can see who's done what over the past history. I want to provision a new data store on EMC storage, and my options are which business group is going to get this storage, what virtual pool should this be tied to. So again, this is going to Viper, which Viper has abstracted all of the storage. So if I choose tier 1 storage, that virtual pool can actually be tied to a number of different storage arrays. EMC or non-EMC, it doesn't matter. Viper Controller abstracts that information. If you've never heard about Viper Controller, please, please, please do Google search, Bing search, or ask any EMC employee here, go to our booth. Viper is the virtualization of storage that vSphere is the virtualization of compute. It's very cool stuff. So things like resource pools and limits and things like that that are found in vSphere, think of being able to do that with storage, and that's Viper Controller. I give it a data store name and a capacity. I submit the task, and Viper does all the heavy lifting. vRealize automation kicks off a VCO script to Viper to provision storage. Behind the scenes, I have a data store cluster dedicated to manufacturing. So what's going to happen is just going to add another data store that's 1 terabyte in size to that existing data store cluster. It's going to go and edit the reservations of the manufacturing group. So there's business groups and fabric groups within vRealize automation. It's going to expand that reservation to make instant use of this storage immediately for that set of users. All right. Backup service, just as simple, right? All the steps that I showed earlier that it takes to create a backup service level in Avamar, I'm simply just choosing request, giving a description for auditing purposes, and then I'm choosing a name of this service level. I'm choosing the frequency of backup, what time this backup will happen, and how long I'll retain the backup. So this is a daily backup happening at 2200 hours. The retention of that backup is for 2 years. It's going to go through and create that policy and do everything that I showed earlier that it has to do. This is normal 101 stuff to an Avamar/VMware admin, right, to create a backup level. All right, so now I'm going to log in as an end user. End user has a different catalog. End users shouldn't be able to provision storage or create backup service levels, but they should be able to consume services that IT allows them to consume. So again, I have my full catalog of infrastructure as a service items, application as a service, maybe platform as a service, even desktop as a service. I want to throw VDI workloads in there, right? The portal gives you endless capabilities. I'm going to go and create a Windows-based virtual machine, and within this, I'm going to be given a number of options. How many CPUs, how much RAM, how much storage, what type of storage. The next thing that we have, though, is because of that integration with Avamar, I can choose which backup service level I want to protect this machine with. So this is pulling this from Avamar. Those are the service levels available. I'm going to choose a daily 1-year service level, and what's going to happen is when I go and provision this virtual machine, it's also going to add it to Avamar for protection, right? Just by choosing that one backup service level option. The next piece of integration is, again, with Viper, right? So I have one virtual disk that's within this virtual machine. It's a 20 gigabyte VMDK. I'm going to choose which storage level, which tier level I want this VMDK to live on. So I'm going to pull that data again from Viper. These are the virtual pools that me as an end user have access to within the manufacturing group, right? I have access to tier 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to choose tier 1, submit, and now that virtual machine is being created. So I'm having a virtual machine created, which is no frills, right? That's VCAC, and we've done that in the past for 10 plus years now. But we've also added this virtual machine to the backup policy for Avamar, and we've tied the VMDK to a data store on Viper, right? Being managed by Viper. So here are my items. I have my virtual machine running. This is that Windows machine we just created. And what you'll see on the bottom right of the actions are some new options that we've added because of this integration. So now as an end user, I also have the ability now to create on-demand backups of that virtual machine, or maybe an on-demand restoration. Or maybe I just want to see how many backups have been taken of this machine on Avamar. If I click on Get Backup Stats, it's going to kick off a workflow that will in turn send me an email. It knows my email address because of my login into vRealize Automation, and I receive the email now that shows that I have 4 backups of this virtual machine. Think about what would have to happen normally. I'm an owner of a virtual machine. I want to know how many backups. That typically means I have to email my backup admin or track them down and wait, right? Now it's a simple scriptable process that I can do anytime. The same thing for doing on-demand backups or restorations. I've taken the step out. I've taken the human element step out of this, right? So I can click on demand restore, choose which backup I want to restore from, hit submit, and that virtual machine will be powered off, restored from that backup, and powered back on. This is image level restoration. This is what's included at this version level of the code, but we are working also adding in things like file level restoration. However, if you're an Avamar customer, you already have this, right? It would just be a separate web interface. We're looking at integrating that interface or functionality of that interface into this portal, so you have one portal, right? So file level restoration already there, already a great Avamar feature, just not within the portal because we haven't written it in yet, right? Same thing for backup. I want to do on-demand backup, click a button, backup's taken. Simple as that. Okay, so high-level overview of what we've done as part of the solution. So all the integration into tools like Avamar and Viper, right? I've gone fully into depth, right? So creation of backup policies, creation of storage, virtual data stores for VMware consumption, the ability to do backup and restoration as an end user for individual virtual machines, or to choose the backup or storage tiering within the virtual machine during creation. The financial reporting that Tyler showed earlier, right? Being able to pull all that data in to show true cost analysis of exactly how much a virtual machine is costing. The ability to provision not only infrastructure virtual machines, but also applications, right? Application as a service, and also the ability to layer on things like Pivotal Cloud Foundry on top of this. So developers or DevOps could very easily provision applications in an environment that they're accustomed to, right? Which is typically command line, right? A little bit, pulling back the kimono a little bit, this is the specific technology that we leveraged and we are leveraging, right? So compute and network from a physical standpoint, again, is not relevant, right? Storage, obviously, we want it to be EMC storage. We would love for it to be EMC storage. But because we're abstracting that with our software-defined storage layer, which is Viper, honestly, as long as the storage is supported by Viper, it's going to work, right? That's the beauty of virtualization, right, that we all grown and loved. Integration into Avamar and data domain for the data protection, right, the demonstration I showed. ITBM, now known as vRealize Business, for the cost analysis. The vSphere providing the virtualization of the compute. Obviously integrating into APIs like VAI and VASA for offloading storage tasks. Log Insight for reporting of the logs, centralization of the logs. NSX or VCNS for virtualizing of network. VCOps or vRealize operations. and our storage analytics plugins for a single dashboard view of M&O, orchestrator for orchestrating workflows, VCAC or vRealize automation to automate everything and provide that portal for the end users. And then these modular add-ons. So these are options that you can add into the solution. They'll be fully supported, fully integrated. Things like Recover Point for disaster recovery, Data Protection Advisor, which is a part of the Data Protection Suite, vPlex, SRM, et cetera. All right, well, at this time, I'll hand it back over to Tyler to wrap things up. Just a few more slides, and then we'll get into some Q&A.
Cool, thanks. So, so I mean, you can see the components that we have in the solution there. The challenge is, wow, that seems like a lot of products. How do we get this to happen more quickly so we can focus on the stuff that is important, the application stuff, the other services, integrations with Active Directory and stuff like that, instead of infrastructure. So this was a big focus while we were putting together this enterprise hybrid cloud solution, was to shrink those times pretty dramatically. So what we've done is we've put together a number of services that are available to shrink those deployments, as Rick mentioned. Basically, if you're kind of within the confines of the initial deployment, we said, hey, look, we can get all those software components, underlying infrastructure up and running, as well as those initial blueprints. And that's one of the things I actually want to mention about those integrations. There's plenty of VCO workflows. A lot of other companies have VCO workflows. They're great. Where we've taken this to the next level is you saw there were actual blueprints within the VCAC interface. So we actually have a VCO workflow that calls the vRealize automation APIs to create the blueprints, to add those customizations into the screen when you went to do the Avamar backups, things like that. So all of that has been automated and built into a VCO workflow to deploy all that stuff, so we can shrink the deployment down pretty dramatically. And since this was such a big focus internally, and while we were trying to put this together, if you were at EMC World, you may have seen the Build a Cloud Live Build a Hybrid Cloud Live booth at EMC World, which Rick and I were both a part of. And the challenge they gave us, they said, this sounds great, but if we tell customers it's quick, they're not going to believe us. So we want to build one very quickly. And they gave us 48 hours. They said, all that stuff from gear showing up to deploying applications, deploying Pivotal, Cloud Foundry, deploying all these things, we want it done in 48 hours. So what we did to speed that up, we used vBlock, obviously, because it made it really easy to get an all integrated package. And we're able to configure all of the software on site, including integrating things like vPlex, and deliver this in a very short time frame. Once the initial infrastructure deployment things, right? So bringing it in, plugging it in, cabling, checking, powering things on, the actual software deployment configuration, we're able to get under 5 hours. So the interesting piece about that was it really, and we had EMC professional services working there too, and this was kind of a test bed to show that we could do this very quickly. And now obviously when it's a clean environment, right, so we knew what IP addresses we were going to use, we knew where we were going to put things, we knew where the ISOs were, the usual type stuff that you kind of problems you run into. So obviously it's not going to be that fast, but we realized the pieces of it that we have it down to such a science so we can get all these components delivered and deployed in a very short period of time. And that was something that customers found really valuable. Speaking of customers, just wanted to mention a couple quick. There have built hybrid clouds based on these type of solutions. One is Express Scripts, which we are also a customer of as well. The mail order pharmacy company. So they're leveraging these components to be able to provide services to their internal users in a very easy, cost-effective way. Another one you actually heard during the VMware keynote, the Apollo Education Group. They're leveraging these components with EMC and VMware vRealize automation to provide these capabilities to their internal clients. So what are those really? What are the considerations when you're trying to put this together? It's really a three-phase kind of approach, right? The plan, the implement, and then the ongoing consumption and kind of continuous improvement of your service offerings. So it's figuring out for each of the layers and the tiers what what fits your environment. So for example, Rick mentioned on the networking side, we've tested it with NSX and just vCloud networking security. That's a great decision point to decide what fits our environment. So if you have a large, complicated network, and NSX can bring a ton of value to simplify that and speed provisioning, it's a great fit. If you have a much more simple network, it may be overkill. So it's working through some of those type of things to figure out what makes sense for your environment, so you're delivering the appropriate solutions without overcomplicating things. So let's talk about where this is going. So Rick talked about kind of what we can do today, and that's all today stuff. So where's our vision for this hybrid cloud? Where are we taking it? So obviously the underlying pieces with the storage integration with Viper, and hey, we can use things like VNX and VMax is pretty straightforward. Providing those, what we were calling Platform 2 apps, so the traditional Microsoft, SAP type, Oracle type traditional workloads. We leverage a number of tools to be able to deploy those, and we even showed that at EMC World as well, deploying not just that Oracle example I showed, but deploying even SAP in an automated fashion right from the catalog, as well as integration with, for third platform apps, so Pivotal Cloud Foundry. If you were not at the earlier VCAC Cloud Foundry session, I think it was at 12:30, I highly recommend it. Check it out in the catalog and catch the recording of it. They're talking about vRealize Automation 6.1 and the integrations with Pivotal Cloud Foundry. It's really impressive stuff. So now it's looking to provide additional services on top of that, things like object stores. So if you heard the announcement, vCloud Air is offering a object storage based on Viper. Those capabilities we're building into here also. So again, some more of those pre-built blueprints you can have access to say, you know what, I want to be able to have a developer log in and ask for an object store. Scale out NAS. Isilon is already supported. We're looking to bring in that further support of things for things like Scale.io, to if you're looking for more commodity-based storage and it's not an all VMware environment, not just for something like vSAN. And expanding the support for other stuff. So a lot of the work we've done around this, as Rick mentions, with the vCloud Air and vCloud Air network, but expanding that support to include AWS and Google and Azure. Obviously, vCloud Automation, some vRealize Automation supports a lot of those today. But what we want to do is we want to have a way to really add additional value so customers can have a very simple way to request services in here and get the same experience no matter where it lands. And it expands beyond VMware, right? So this is what we call our VMware EHC internally. We're also, soon you'll see a Microsoft-based one, leveraging a lot of the Microsoft components. And one that's near and dear to my heart is the OpenStack-based EHC. So the federation that Rick talked about earlier of EMC, VMware, Pivotal, RSA is about choice. So we partner when we can, and then we also give customers choice to do things a different way. So we're building solutions around these other capabilities as well. So that way, if something makes a little bit more sense for your environment, we have those capabilities too. Do some questions, get some gift cards, drink some coffee.
Coffee. All right. Well, first, thank you guys very much for the time today. So we appreciate you all. We do have some time. Thank you. We do have some time for Q&A, and we do have, I think, like 5 gift cards. So, first question, yeah. The mic's not on. Hold on one second. There you go.
Hello?
Perfect. Yeah.
I missed in your 48-hour no sleep period, I'm sure, that took you to create your virtual cloud. What did you use? I missed. What did you use to set up the networks and so forth? I missed that portion of it. Yep. So you have a vBlock, you have EMC, you have Viper, you had the hardware and the virtual components.
Yeah, so
what did you do to build all the networks and so forth to get it going?
Perfect question. So the networks were virtualized. Come on up for a gift card. So thank you. So the network was NSX based. So within the vBlock, they're leveraging Nexus 5000 switches, right, to provide the IP and fiber connectivity.
The vCloud Air interface or vCloud? What did you use actually?
No, so NSX is managed completely through the vSphere web client. So the interface that you use to manage your virtualization provides the management for NSX as well. So we actually create all of our networks within NSX. So the network coming in is essentially flat, right? No VLANs, it's just a flat network. And then NSX actually abstracts and virtualizes all that. So NSX handles VLANing, handles all the policies and permissions. So we can do, the new buzzword I heard in the keynote was micro-segmentation, right? So we have segmentation of business units, but then we can do micro-segmentation within a business unit to protect individual applications and things like that. So that's what we leveraged as part of the build out. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
You might not want to talk about this, licensing. So tell me how this guy's licensed and the underlying software that you, like customer like myself, probably don't have the underlying vRealize. I know I don't have that, right? So what is required for me, or is that bundled into your pricing?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. The components include a number of EMC and VMware licenses, and some of them, as Rick showed earlier, are kind of optional. And I mentioned NSX, for example. So generally, when we're helping customers build this, we do kind of like a gap analysis from a license perspective, and try and leverage the licenses you already own. So most customers have vSphere licenses, they have vCenter licenses. Some, if you've done a VMware ELA, you may already have VCloud or vRealize. You may have some of those components. So a lot of times there's a couple licenses they're missing. Other times it's a whole bundled thing, but that's usually we go through with.
Yeah, so it depends, but the thing to know, and I was in another session that this came up. They were asking a panel, what licensing should I buy from VMware if I want to do X, Y, and Z? So if you're not familiar with their licensing model, there's obviously a la carte, right? I can buy vSphere, I can buy VCOps, I can buy VCAC, I can buy all these separate. But then there's bundles. The vSOM bundle. vSOM is vSphere with Operations Manager, right? So you get VCOps and vSphere bundled together. Those are two components of the total solution. The total solution also includes vCloud Automation Center, right? So if you're ever going to buy VMware licenses and you're going to buy 2 or more products, it's actually a way better deal to buy the vCloud Suite, right? Because vCloud Suite actually includes vSphere, VCOps, vCloud Automation Center, and then depending on the level, you might also include SRM. It can include a number of other products. So the recommendation for EHC is actually vCloud Suite, or obviously an ELA. Right? If you have an ELA, then things are a little bit different. But vCloud Suite is the recommendation. Yeah.
Can you try before you buy?
Great question. So, can you try before you buy? Definitely. So, and I'll preface that, we have an environment within EMC called VLab. And VLab is an online way to really test all of our products, every single thing we have out there. EHC is actually part of VLab, so your local EMC SE could actually create an EHC environment for you to use. So that would be the easiest, provisions almost instantly, and you can leverage it in 7-day increments. And actually those reservations could be extended. I think we might see other options with the announcement of Evo Rail. Not announcing anything, this is not a futures thing, but if you think about like Evo Rail, really small form factor, EHC just being software on top of it, it'll be very easy for us to ship a small box, right? So that's more of a hint to maybe my leadership that's sitting in the middle of the room, that we should probably push for POC demo boxes based on Evo Rails, because that'd be really awesome. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
I actually have 2 questions. First one is, if we were going to use this for a VDI deployment and we deployed a bunch of desktops and a couple AD controllers, how do I bridge my public cloud back to my private cloud so that my Active Directory controllers can replicate and my public cloud desktops can access services in my private cloud?
That's a fantastic question. So that's one of the big advantages we see from customers leveraging the vCloud Air or vCloud Air network is a lot of the compatibilities between the underlying APIs. So it's if you've ever seen vCloud Connector, for example, vCloud Connector can make the connection between a vCloud Air powered service provider or vCloud Air and an internal environment. And as a piece of that, there's also a networking configuration component, which can basically stand up a tunnel to be able to flatten that network out. For more advanced things, we can also do it with NSX. So like, for example, the EMC World demonstration we did, we actually, from the show, we connected to vCloud Air, and we provisioned machines there, we provisioned machines internally, and we moved them. We used NSX to stretch those networks because it gave the capability for the solution to create new networks out there as well in a pretty seamless manner. But again, it goes back to that may be overkill for your particular use case with desktops. VCNS may be able enough to get that done. So that way, you have a domain controller sitting out there, you have virtual desktops sitting out there. That may be a pretty flat network configuration. You may not need a lot of bells and whistles.
And my second question is related to deploying a SQL server and the backups related to that. How granular can you get with the recovery?
So with this configuration here, what you saw when Rick demonstrated it, it's leveraging our image level backups within Avamar. So what happens is Avamar has these little proxy VMs. So when you add it to the policy, it sees that VM show up in vCenter, and then it does an image level backup. So there's no app integration at that point with this piece, but Avamar provides that capability. So you can basically just drop an agent then at that point in the VM and get the typical granular SQL backups if you want, and be able to get them in a consistent manner, right? So it's talking to SQL and the VSS writers.
So maybe like every 15 minutes, half hour, I'm getting a backup and.
Yeah, the way Avamar works is it's source-based deduplication. So it's scanning and just looking for changes, and it's only sending. He doesn't get one for every question, right? Yeah. So it's scanning for changes, so that way it doesn't have to read the entire thing, send it across the network, and then kind of do destination-based deduplication. So it's doing it at the source, so it can scan through that database. When you're looking for very often backups like that, hourly, there's other solutions there. So like Recover Point, for example, gives you almost like a DVR functionality. And one of the things that was announced this week is Recover Point for VMs. So no reliance on the underlying storage. It could be EMC, it could be something else. And I believe Chad said earlier that you'll be able to download it in like an unsupported fashion, but I don't know.
I heard free.
Yeah, free.
Free.
So yeah, it's on the internet, so it must be true.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Yeah. So perfect.
My question's about Viper SRM versus your plugin for Operations Manager. Do you see a reason to still have the SRM?
Yeah, so there's, to be completely frank, there's a ton of overlap there, right? And I think just putting that out there, there's overlap in what they do, the data they collect, but their design centers are a little different, right? So with the reason it has the name vRealize Operations is very focused on operational dashboarding. Like if you go down to the vLabs, right, you see you're seeing live real time what's happening. SRM has much more focus on reporting, so generating reports, and it's also a bigger focus on physical and storage specific things. So there's, if you're looking for, I have physical servers that have LUNs and I'm replicating them and I want to capture all that data to see what's using what, there's pieces like that. If you're looking for more longer-term reporting, you want to generate reports and send them out type of thing, where I have a number of customers that have both, but it's really, again, which you're going to bring, and I have customers that say, look, I have this much money, I can't do both. And it's like, well, what are the biggest problems? Is it operationally looking for fixing problems, root cause type stuff, or is it more longer-term trending and reporting that kind of helps them lean which way? Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great time tonight at the party.
Yeah.